When Kevin Durant and the Brooklyn Nets were facing an embarrassing first-round sweep at the hands of the Boston Celtics, running out of time and options to salvage a season from the bottom of the dumpster fire,
Level with me? Did we suck?
Kevin Durant went to the team group chat and asked Ben Simmons if he was going to play in Game 4. And apparently, whatever allergy Ben Simmons has to open dunks also extends to text messages, because his only response to his team in their time of crisis was to ghost him. My man straight up left the chat.
I can't deal with all the chat.
But what's even wilder is the fact that this isn't even the second time that he's used New Phone Who This as a communication tool. What's going on? Welcome to Hoops and Dreams and the mini ghost of Ben Simmons, and what it could mean for player empowerment and player entitlement is where we're going to start today. So here's how Rick broke it all down.
Ben Simmons, they're having a team chat before Game 4, thinking he's going to play against the Boston Celtics. Asked him, are you going to play? Ben left the chat. Like, he didn't even answer the question, just left the chat.
Now, normally, I tell folks to take the media with the kind of salt that Southerners usually use for their grits, but if this is true, it's damning. I mean, it's one thing to be standoffish with fans and reporters alike, but even if you break the player's code doing the right thing, it can get you to end up spending your winters in Minnesota. I wonder what bailing on your team with their back against the wall hits like, especially after you've heavily implied that you'll play. Even more confusing is the fact that we know Ben Simmons had a good reason to note out of Game 4, as he had back surgery later on, but that feels like a pandemic and a pox ago, so let's run it all back. Okay, so last year, after the kind of drama that deserves a video on its own, the Brooklyn Nets tripped backwards into the first round of the playoff on sheer Kevin Durantiness alone.
I mean, don't you have a plan B?
Your plan B is enforcing plan A.
Their reward, though, was meeting a Boston Celtics squad that routinely caught more bodies than church ushers and had a Defensive Player of the Year to prove it. And as you can imagine, it was not going well. Down 3-0, the Nets looked overmatched, overwhelmed, and for a team with championship aspirations, overblown. Which is wild because preseason, the Nets were supposed to be like the Avengers.
We're the Avengers, man.
But this series has been like watching a bizarro version of Endgame, where Thor leaves to join the X-Men, Iron Man gets wrecked by Thanos, and Black Panther only fights half the battles. But even then there was hope, because Ben Simmons had been playing in practice without pain for over a week and a half and was cleared for contact ahead of Game 2. He felt so good, in fact, that he let it be known that he was expecting to play in Game 4.
Put me in, coach.
But that didn't happen, and if what Rick says bears out, then this thing goes beyond FUBAR, because that is a level of basketball dysfunction that belongs in a museum. I mean, some ballers get accused of being passive-aggressive, but Simmons is built different. He's passive-evasive, but he's run this play before, and on his very last team, in fact. And we know this because Ryan Russillo asked his former teammate Danny Green about this directly, and here's what he had to say.
I think we all tried at different times to reach out. So I did reach out. I don't know if his number had changed. I think his number might have changed at that point. I reached out on a personal level and said, look, man, I mean, we can turn this thing around. Let's just sit down, let's have a talk.
And so he just never got back to you until you saw him in person.
Yeah, I didn't get a response. I think he might have changed his number at that point.
Look, everyone deserves the benefit of the doubt, but once that benefit is exhausted, you are whatever is left. And at this point, what's left looks like a pattern, especially when you consider that he's even done this to his coach. And before I explain Ben's reasoning to you, let me first say that it only really makes sense if you imagine him as a character in Euphoria. So do that if it helps. But according to NBC Sports, Ben Simmons had a laundry list of reasons to leave Philly about as long as your arm. But the one involving his coach Doc Rivers was the funniest, because even though Ben admits that he ghosted Doc's texts and calls, he was upset that Doc couldn't find him. He says that he should have tried harder.
Why don't you love me, Jenny?
What? I mean, with that kind of logic, we know that Ben Simmons never played hide and seek as a kid. Otherwise, he'd be on the back of a milk carton or a t-shirt. But the man who might have flatlined Ben Simmons' reputation for good was Stephen A. Smith, because after he bailed on Game 4, Smith verbally dismantled every piece of Ben Simmons' gaming rig and smacked him in the head with it.
Nobody is worse than Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons might also be the weakest, most pathetic excuse for a professional athlete we have ever seen in not just American history, but the history of sports.
Yikes. burn notice. And he wasn't done. He basically goes on to say that a basketball player should get paid for more than their ability to switch skins like a Fortnite avatar.
Everybody's covering for him. He's on the bench, Molly. Green one day, orange the next.
Stephen A. Smith goes on to make more angry noises until he lands on a point that actually brings us full circle to something that I mentioned at the top.
Disgrace. Enough's enough of this. And when it's stealing money rather, and when the NBA has their collective bargaining negotiation and they start talking about pay for play, to the owners are coming. And when they come and they put in a Ben Simmons rule or a Kyrie rule, I want to see how supportive the players are of them.
Except I differ from Stephen A. in that I wouldn't call this player empowerment run wild. This is player entitlement run amok. And unchecked, it's going to hurt a lot of players.
And you can try to hold out if you want to. There's only a few of y'all that's making those mega dollars. You got cats making 45 to 50 million, and then you got cats making a few $100,000. There's a huge discrepancy there.
At this point, it's easy to see why Kevin Durant would be frustrated with the Brooklyn situation and want to bounce. I mean, Ben Simmons is a cold-blooded quitter, a frosted flake, and I'll resist calling Kyrie Irving great nuts for symmetry's sake to point out that a system where a Ben Simmons doesn't feel as though he owes a conversation to a Kevin Durant as at least a professional courtesy is not one of player empowerment. It's player entitlement. And it will be what the Governors use as a straw man to try to claw back some of the well-deserved gains that the players have made in the CBA. And even more important than the money aspect is the one that I've saved for last, the mental health struggles. Because if it is legit, then Ben Simmons should appreciate the fact that he belongs to an era and a league that is super engaged on that front. And you can ask a cat like Delonte West that this wasn't always the case. And Ben can express that appreciation by communication to the other stakeholders on his team, and after that, just focus in on getting well. But if it isn't legit, and this is just some ploy to extract cash, then that needs to be called out as well. Because anything that might cause the next player to hesitate to speak up or get the help that he or she needs is too high a price to pay for a new contract. But personally, I take Ben Simmons at his word. I'm honestly inclined to believe him. I mean, if that wardrobe ain't a cry for help, I don't know what is. Thanks for watching View the Right Thing, soon to be called Hoops and Dreams. And if you dig the vibe, hit the subscribe to join the tribe. Peace.